Hello everyone, Sandra here, and welcome to the Life and Channel update video for August of 2024. And as always, it's been a long month, because every month is long. Also, I've been noticing that I've been having a little bit of fiddliness with my microphone cable, so if the sound suddenly cuts out, hopefully I notice and I can fiddle with the cable enough to repair that particular issue or alleviate it. I think the microphone stand that I've been putting on over there held it in a way that was too tight for it and stressed the connectors a bit, so they're a bit finicky now, unfortunately. I have rejiggered how I've been using the microphone stand, so that way it comes across here and holds the microphone over here, which is closer to where I used to have it, and puts less strain on the cable and whatnot, but that's been something that's been an issue. Let me move this up. I like to look at the OBS preview, but the higher I have it, the more it looks like I'm looking at you at the webcam that I'm recording off of. So anyway, August. There's been a lot of stuff. A lot of, I did some Guild Wars 1 streaming kind of early on in the month. And then it looks like, looking at my notes of the month that I call my dear patrons, daily diary that I do for my Patreon. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Santier. I will not be putting a thing up, but you can find a link in the description. You know, and it's just my luck. I start recording and my throat starts getting scratchy. Was I having problems a moment ago? No. Anyway, that's life. So I did do some Guild Wars 1 streaming this month. I'm wanting to do some more within the next couple of days, probably, but that's not until after this video goes out, and who knows what I actually end up doing. But then the Wilds of Janthir expansion for Guild Wars 2 came out, and that held my attention. So I was kind of focused on playing that when that came out. I did quite enjoy the story of Wilds of Janthir. There's still all sorts of random other things for me to do in it, but I liked the story. I liked the way it connected back to previous world stuff that Secrets of the Obscured kind of moved away from, and Wilds of Janthir pulled those together and had a bit of a slower pace that I appreciated. So, man, this is unfortunate. Anyway, I felt that they did a really good job with what they were doing with that, and really pulled things like that. They had a whole blog post they wrote, ArenaNet being they, about lessons learned from working on Secrets of the Obscure, and I really feel like those lessons were learned, and we can see the fruit of that education in Wilds of Janthir thus far. So, I also just really like the feel of the new maps. They feel distinct in a way that I'm enjoying, but yeah. So the month though itself kind of started with the Bloomborough pre-release. I do the local game store that I go to runs pre-releases on like the pre-release weekend, but then also the following week. They run it. They don't do F&M. They do Thursday Night Magic instead. I don't know why, but that's just what they've done. I think to try to not compete with some of the other game stores in the area. There's quite a few, so that makes sense why they do things a little bit differently. But they do the pre-release, or a pre-release flight on the, instead of drafting, on the like day before release sort of thing. So the F&M equivalent of the week after the pre-release weekend. So that's usually when I do it, and I had fun with Bloomborough. Bloomborough feels to me, as far as Magic sets go, like a very well constructed one, where they've thought a lot about how all of the pieces fit together. And so there's a lot of cards that can do things for multiple decks, depending upon like what pieces you're actually pulling together to do them. And so that's something that really impressed me. So like a good example is there's a self-mill selection card that's squirrel themed, but it also works quite well with some of the threshold stuff that rats have. So if you end up with some of that, it can like help, especially weirdly enough, like if you're in blue-green, which is frogs theoretically, because it's a typal, I guess they're calling it now, kindred, whatever they want to call it. But you could still end up with some rat cards that care about threshold or having enough cards in your graveyard, and then this green card can help make that work, even though it's kind of like off color for where it's theoretically supposed to be. Anyway, it just feels like there's a lot of things like that where it's like, oh, this is a little bit player that can serve multiple roles in multiple different decks, and there's a lot of cards that are like, oh, I care about the creature types that are in this color. And it's a way where it feels like they've taken the idea of a kindred set, kind of like Lorwyn. Original Lorwyn release was when I started playing Magic, so I've been playing it for quite a long time now. But that set had a very strong typal theme where it cared about specific creature types, and they used Changeling as kind of the glue to kind of be able to make that kind of fit together. Whereas it feels a lot looser, where it's like there are themes for the creature types. So like frogs want to be bounced. They want to leave the battlefield and come back in some way that isn't touching the graveyard. And there's cards that help that. And then there's like the expend 4 theme in raccoons, for example. Like these are things where, oh, these can be helpful in different ways, and it's not always specifically calling out a creature type, and that's a way that makes it feel like it works. It feels very intricate in a way that really tickles my brain. So I've been enjoying that set quite a bit. Though, one of the things that I have been doing is being very careful about budgeting. And let me tell you, Magic gets expensive if you're doing drafts all the time. My LGS is trying to start up standard events, but they haven't gotten enough interest yet for one to actually fire. So those are running parallel to the drafts. But yeah, it's tough to figure out how to budget that in. Because the thing is, I want to play Magic because it's fun, but also going out to these Magic events is a really important social event for me. And it's something that I really value from that standpoint. So it's like I want to be putting some of my limited funds towards it, but also less than I have been. And so trying to figure out how to make that happen. And if Standard starts firing, that'll help tremendously. But that's something that I'd really like to have happen. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2 in general lately. I don't know, I've been having fun with it, which is good. I've also just realized that like aesthetics matter a lot for how much I enjoy playing a character. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to be thinking about. But let's see, what other things do I want to touch on? So yeah, there's a couple of things just glancing through the list here that I wanted to make sure to try to touch on. Probably the 2 main ones is I got a couple of articles done, so I will link those in the description. I got one done talking about a little bit about OnlyFans. And just, if you're curious, read that one. It's a mixed bag. And then also one talking and just doing some speculation about like, oh, if there's an infinite universe, like why might there be an infinite universe? Like why might God create an infinite universe? It's kind of the impetus for the thought process. So it's just some speculation that I was doing in there that was kind of fun to think through. It's a much shorter article. But I have another one that I realized I need to write in the long list of Ciantura Goes Super Introspective. So that felt like it was assigned to me on Sunday by God, so I've got some writing to do on that. The other thing that I want to talk about is just this a mindset shift. There's one more thing that I know that I want to talk about, but before I get to that, there's a book that I finished reading that I want to talk about a little bit. But I had a mindset shift that I think happened either like at the tail end of July, or early on in August. I'm kind of looking at my notes here. I think it was the tail end of July. But I've always struggled with bedtimes, and the mindset shift, I feel like I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to embrace who I am, not who I think I ought to be. And that's been a real challenge, as anybody who's regularly reads my blog, such as I regularly post there anyway, who's been keeping up on my blog, I suppose is more accurate, but will be familiar with. And there's a lot that society says of like, here's how you should be a person. And a lot of it doesn't work super well for me. But there's also just like feeling a need to sort of embrace who I am more. So I've struggled a lot with bedtimes, and I feel like I'm bearing the lead a little bit. Anyway, the mental shift that has helped me tremendously is to not see going to bed as going to sleep, not making those two things synonyms. Because one of the things that I quite enjoy is daydreaming. It's a great time for me to just play with storytelling ideas, world-building ideas, mostly world-building ideas. Let's be real here. And that's something that I really enjoy. And taking a mental shift from I'm going to bed to go to sleep to I'm going to bed to daydream, and in that process I will eventually fall asleep, has helped a lot with making it easier for me to be consistent with, or more consistent anyway, with getting myself to bed. Even if I'm not consistently falling asleep at a specific time, like that mental shift changes sort of what the activity is, and that's been really, really helpful. So I think I've been pretty good about getting to bed at a much earlier time. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm falling asleep then, but just sort of embracing like, oh, this is something that I enjoy doing. It's okay to make time for it in this way, and it can help with this. So anyway, that's something that has been a very helpful mental shift for me. And I have found it quite enjoyable. So the final thing that I really wanted to talk about today, however, in this Life and Channel update, is the book that I finished reading. So I'm going to, I was thinking about writing kind of a book report or a review of it, but then other things came up, and I was working on other articles, and now I have this other thing that I want to write, and it's like, I don't think I'm just going to like ever get to it, so I'll just kind of talk about it a little bit here. The book itself is called Naked Feminism, Breaking the Cult of Female Modesty by Victoria Bateman. She is making a statement with the cover. That is, in fact, her. And the book itself is, it is examining the way in which women's bodies are treated by the cult of female modesty. I'll dig into it a bit more, but I kind of want to give a little bit of an overview. This is just what the rest of this is going to be. So if you're not interested, thank you for watching, and you can head on out. But if you're curious, stick around, and I'll talk about it some. So the book itself is a sort of deep dive into this concept that Bateman calls the cult of female modesty. The best way that I would kind of define the thesis of the book is the way in which society holds women responsible for men, for like men's response to them, I suppose, is the best way of kind of phrasing that. I don't know, something that I was thinking about, like, okay, what do I want to talk about if I wrote a book report, but never actually got anywhere with it. So I'm going to try to do my best to summarize my thoughts. So in many regards, this book is sort of preaching to the choir. I appreciate a lot of what she's saying, though, because it's giving me a lot more information and a lot more detail. The first part of it was really difficult and sort of frustrating and angering to read, not because of what her writing is, but what she's writing about. Just the way that women have historically been oppressed over the years, over the millennia, let's be real, is just... it's wrath-inducing in me, is really what it comes down to. And the book itself is broken into 4 larger chapters that each have smaller segments in them, as well as an introduction and a conclusion. And the parts are like going over the history of like, okay, what has it done? What is the cult of female modesty done? And like, how is it operating, and what are like different eras, and what are some of the larger points you could be making about it, arguments around it, and how it's been part of feminism and what to do now, basically, is my very poorly worded overview of what the chapters are discussing. And the way that I would kind of summarize it, it's just, it goes into a lot of depth. So the high level is when women's value is placed on their virtue or their purity, we'll get to those words, those are important to define, it creates problems for all women. So there's a couple of things. So virtue or purity has to do with basically like connected to virginity. Functionally, it's have they been the property of another man? It's kind of what it comes down to in many regards. Or like how many sexual partners have they had? This sort of thing. It's it's reducing a woman to what she has done with her body. And trying to figure out the right words to kind of phrase this, and the consequences that has on women in general. So, some of the components of this cult of female modesty is a sort of modesty rat race. So, you want the women of your culture to have the highest purity and highest virtue, which means it's equated to modesty, right? How modest are they? And so that goes up as they cover up, but so you have to denigrate those who cover more than them and less. And so it's kind of a rat race. It's the value that they have in marriage as a marriage mate sort of thing. And don't like talking about this because it's disgusting, but here we are. I think she's accurately analyzed a lot of cultural things, and a lot of cultural things that I dislike about culture. And so it doesn't. You'll see things like, oh, that woman is trying to be sexy to men, therefore she's devaluing all women, making them into sex objects. And she talks a lot in the later parts about the concept of internalized male gaze. And what this kind of comes down to, the way that I phrase it now, I don't think Bateman holds religious beliefs, or at least she didn't really express any in the book. But the way that I view it, coming from my Christian lens, is in the Garden of Eden, at the fall, when God is like, what have you done? Adam blames Eve for his error. And the fall happens, and the curse that women will basically be ruled over by men. I don't think that's something where God is like, I want this to happen. I think this is something where he's like, this is a consequence of sin. This is going to happen as a consequence of sin. And it's moving away from that is good, in my opinion. But Adam blames Eve for his error. And I think that is echoed in this, to where men blame women for how they respond to what women do, in order to be able to not be held accountable for their own actions. So, in other words, women are being held accountable for what men do to women specifically. And that's obviously, like, when you put it that way, I think it should be obvious that that's absolutely ridiculous. But that's what's happening, right? Where it's like, oh, a man treats a woman badly and it's the woman's fault, right? And so there's this idea that in order to be respectable, a woman has to be have bodily modesty. But that doesn't solve the problem, right? It doesn't change the inequality. It is, the cult of female modesty is a tool of the patriarchy because it still centers men. It centers the male reaction, or the perceived male reaction. Instead of teaching men how to be responsible for themselves, it puts that responsibility on women. And that's deeply unfair. And so the book overall is a deep dive into what sort of things have happened as a consequence of this. So, for example, women not being allowed to get an education, limitations on what work women can do, because, if they're going into a workplace where there's men, that creates opportunities for bodily modesty to be violated. Honor killings, female genital mutilation. All of these things to preserve a woman's honor, her modesty, her sexual purity. That horrible oppression and abuses of women, often perpetuated by women. And there's some chilling statistics in the book about that. So it can superficially seem, and again, this is in part because of how cultural, okay, so the proper word is meme. That word has been like absolutely obliterated by the internet, but it was a concept, if I remember correctly, introduced by Richard Dawkins. Don't always agree with him on everything, but I think this is a concept that is very accurate, which is a meme is a gene, right? It is mimetic. It is an idea that is passed down. And just the way that genetics are passed down, ideas are passed down. And that's what a meme properly is an idea that is passed down through the generations. So cultural concepts, traditions are memes. A tradition is a type of meme. And so my hair is getting long enough that it gets in my eyes, which is a novel experience. But this idea of these memes that are being passed down about what makes a person respectable, what makes a person honorable, what makes a person deserving of love and care and worth. And the way that those get passed down, it creates this idea that this is the right way for things to be. This is how things are supposed to be. So this is what a respectable woman is like, and this is what a non-respectable woman is like. And so women are constantly, by this cult of female modesty, being placed on this scales of judgment for worth, like women of virtue and women who are virtueless, who are not worthy, who don't have value. This is an absolutely horrific thing. And the scale is how much are they? It's kind of arbitrary, right? That's the thing, is it's completely arbitrary. It's a completely arbitrary judgment. That is just a cultural value. It's a meme that is being passed down. Anyway, the book goes into a lot of detail. I personally think it was a really worthwhile read, and I would recommend it. But there's definitely a lot of like, I don't like how society has been and continues to be in there. So I think that's going to wrap things up for me for today, for this month. Hopefully next month I will be able to have another article have come out, because I would like to get that done. I don't know. There's so many other random things I'm processing. So many other random things. But until next time, everyone, thank you for watching, for hanging out. Oh, I should have said this earlier. Would people be interested in watching me stream Guild Wars 2? I'm not. I might consider it. I'm considering it. Terrible time to place that thought, but that's what happens. I don't plan these out, or I'd never get them done. So until next time, everyone, ending for realsies this time. Take care, and goodbye.